Giza Geomatrix team, and very happy to be able to talk to them today and get some further background as well as the new developments that have happened since we last did our audio interview sometime last week, I think it was, right before Bill Brown's presentation that he did in Chicago. And we've got Bill Brown on the phone, as well as Richard Gabriel and Adrian Dudkowitz. No idea. Did I say that right this time or not?
It's close.
It's okay.
Good.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm not going to, there's one other person I'm not going to name on the phone as well. So to start off with, Richard Gabriel, can you start by talking about the background, the chronology of events that have happened up to now, so that people who aren't familiar with what's going on the Giza Plateau and with Giza Geomatrix, your team, will get filled in as far as all of that goes?
Yes, of course. I'd be more than happy to. There's probably quite a few listening now who weren't aware of the first interview, so let's run through the sequence of events and what it's all about. I mean, everybody's had such a great interest in the Giza Plateau for so many years. The Hall of Records, the legendary Hall of Records, supposedly below ground, a repository of information left behind by an alleged previous civilization, and so on and so forth. This has been legitimized more and more in recent times as interest has grown seriously in this subject and aspects of it. And not least of all, if I pick up the story, our story, first of all, in the chronology with the work of Bill Brown, and his wife, Lucina Lovis Brown. Bill, through his own background and research, latched on to the fact that there was more to the story than what others had managed to find in the correlation between the star geometries and the layout of the pyramids, temples, and other sacred places on the ground across the planet, in particular at Giza. Cut a long story short, Bill did discover what we are calling, or have named, the Giza Geomatrix blueprint. Essentially, this is the blueprint that was used originally in order to lay out the fields of pyramids and other places on the plateau and elsewhere, and why it was laid out in that way. I'll say it's a story on its own, and that can be chased up on the website in much more detail. But that's the essential background. Bill's geomatrix blueprint required him then to spend considerable time and expense over dozens of trips to Egypt in order to check out the locations on the ground at these star geometries, which we know as constellations, the hot points, that the star points of those constellations indicated on the ground. The more of these hotspots, we call them hotspots, the star locations on the ground that could be verified as being legitimate, the greater it would validate the blueprint itself. And that was the case. So now we sort of put a hold on the story from that thread for a moment. I can bring in now where we come to the fore, Judith and myself. Our story took us to the Giza Plateau really as a sort of lifetime calling to some purpose, some intent on the plateau. We liken it to the analogy of the film's Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Richard Dreyfuss in the film, where he had this sort of pulling, this calling to the Table Mountain before the climax of the film, and he found that when he got there were hundreds of other people that had this strange calling to that place as well, to some sort of purpose. Well, you know, that's about as close as I can describe it. You know, that calling has been there for myself, for Judith, and it's been strengthened by out-of-body experiences within the Great Pyramid, below ground, and other lucid involvements. So we found when we crossed paths with Bill that several of the places that he was seeking to investigate in order to legitimize the geomatrix happened to be places where people had appeared to us, strangers, apparent strangers, and had inadvertently had led us or taken us and shown us below ground and other things in full view of tourists, police, barriers, and so forth. Regardless of those, we were taken below ground and we were shown all these wonderful things, incredible things, as a part of our development process. Just so happens that those places where we were taken and shown happened to be the very hot spots, or some of them, that Bill was trying to validate. And in one of those in particular, and there was the one where the men died in the village, where there was an illegal dig took place. Now the hotspots led to, in Bill's case, to the purchase, or the almost purchase, of a property over a particular hotspot where we had actually stayed next door on our journey to help validate it. And that property purchase was proceeding. As a part of that property purchase, perfectly legitimately, perfectly legally, while Bill was seeking to check the place out, check the foundations out for further work and so on, he managed to get hold of some people locally who had the right equipment to do GPS scanning, and lo and behold, it showed up quite some interesting things below ground. In fact, it showed up tunnels, and showed up gold caches, and others. It showed signs of ancient advanced technology. Of course, that linked us straight back to the legends of the Hall of Records and so forth. Well, it happened that some of the evidence was stolen from Bill on a trip, and details of that particular hotspot were contained in the evidence that was stolen. And we found that before our next visit together out to Egypt, now working in conjunction with each other, at that hotspot, not only had there been an excavation taken place, but 6 men had lost their lives there under suspicious circumstances. We obviously put two and two together and figured that it was linked to whatever technology was below ground to be found. We know that afterwards there was a cover-up of the whole operation. In fact, there still is to this day. The full details of those deaths and the circumstances surrounding them have never been brought to light. We have pressed to try and get those details revealed. They haven't been forthcoming. And as far as we've been able to piece together, again, the story is on site, and others can go to the site and read the full details. But for the purposes of this sort of summarization, I'll just leave it at that. The fact is that there appeared to be a cover-up on that whole story. Anyway, the purchase of the property in the meantime for Bill was denied at the very 11th hour. Others became involved, it seems, in the background, and the deal was hiked out of his hands, literally as he was at the signing stage to take over the property. You know, he wanted it to live also, to be there at Giza. So we knew that there was likely to be the advanced technology below ground, that from the tunnels that we knew were there had been hiked out of there. We knew that from the background activity that there was another organized group interested in the whole thing, but there was contact also made to Bill, which you can enlarge on, where he was contacted with an attempt to legitimize the background, the backhand business that was going on in the village to the benefit of villagers and all, in order to exploit the brackets Khufu discoveries below ground that the GPR results showed up. You know, we now were fairly sure that we'd latched onto what was possibly Khufu's palace temple below ground. If I go down now, the chronology as I read it, we jump now to the 22nd, 24th April. There was a special interest group sent to Giza. We heard of information that a heat source had been detected high in the GP. And this coincided on the 28th, just afterwards, of course, with the film that came into our possession of the apparent removal of objects from the plateau overnight from 2 o'clock onwards through the night with heavy equipment. That film was captured and was placed into our hands. A couple of frames of it were put on this website. That led to frantic contacts next day for us to put more of the film on site because the guy's life was in danger. We did that after the stills were made public. It was verified to us on the 29th that the whole operation wasn't a hoax and that there was now a major security problem which was connected to the threats made to the filmmaker. We'd obviously stepped on toes. We'd obviously stumbled across something that was far bigger than we realized. Making the film public obviously eased the situation. The film that we put out was obviously edited because there was evidence on the film which would have tied absolutely to where it was taken and other witnesses that were part of it. Around the 29th was when I'm looking down. I've actually got this as I'm relating this to listeners. I'm actually reading down through a sort of chronological list that I have here in front of me. We had verification on the 29th from other sources that the whole thing was not a hoax, that the work that was going on was to remove things from the plateau and quite likely use the tunnel connections which we detected through the GPR results that we had. Also it raised other questions because we were just days away from the open excavations that started to take place at the same time as this sporting event on the plateau, where suddenly the internet was filled with pictures from another source of a 100-foot shaft being opened through 4 levels below ground just to the corner below the front of the Sphinx. And it's in fact the area where we know from personal experience, and we've heard from several other people, is where when you were taking photographs there, if you paid particular interest to that area, where we had already concluded that there were penetrating excavations taking place there, you would be moved on. Basically, you were not invited to pay particular interest to that area. It raised questions such as, for instance, we know that pumps were removing thousands of gallons of water from the area to lower the water table for the Sphinx, and that the water table at the time was sort of a few meters below the Sphinx. So here we were now, a comparatively short time afterwards, and we have a shaft opened going down to 100 foot plus more, running into tunnels and so on.
Excuse me, could you address just very briefly why the water table under the Sphinx is disinformation?
Simply because, and one could understand, that if there is rising water affecting monuments, then obviously it's a task that's got to be addressed. It's fair enough. It does change matters slightly if it's fresh water, not saline. That isn't quite so damaging, perhaps. But that saline, which was also reputed to be contaminated because of the incursion of water from ineffective sewers in the village. So all those factors were sort of background factors to the official reasoning for the water table to be lowered and the pumps to be installed. There was talk, which we've had verified to our own satisfaction, that there was a great deal of water in the area below ground at a deeper level anyway, and it had always been told to us by our sources, that the water was being pumped from a lake rather than from ground suction. But in any event, if one now turns that and links it to the shaft that's just been uncovered and is being investigated, which now from 1 or 2 sources on the web we're being told that those excavations were announced some time ago. They seem to have gone almost unheeded at the time, if that is the case. But nonetheless, here we are now. This 24-foot shaft, which incidentally we knew about from our own GPR scan returns, was there. It's now been opened, and the information is that that's been penetrated down to 100 foot or more. So you got to sort of do a reality check on this. You've got a water table at sort of 5 meters. Now we're 100 foot or more down below ground, and suddenly the water's disappeared, and people are down at that level, dry working and going deeper. And of course, we've got GPR scans showing the tunnels running everywhere. So it does raise questions, doesn't it? That's just a little bit of background I'm throwing in there on that. So if we move down on the chronology, we know around circa 29th there was the info released from, let's just put inverted commas, quiet sources of a high GP heat source monitored. And we have to link also this with the fact that at 10 o'clock following the night time of activity, there was what was taken to be an explosion thought to be underground in the same area where the removal activities were taking place overnight. But now, of course, we had something else that potentially that could link to, and that was this alleged heat source activity high in the pyramid beyond the King's Chamber.
Let me interject here that this information came to Project Camelot from a quiet source who was in contact with a military individual who was relating information because he had heard our first interview with this team, the Giza Geometrics team, and that they also spoke about an entity in that chamber. And they also talked about a couple of different things. One of the things being a shift in the axis of the Earth over a certain number of degrees, and that the chamber itself, even the governments were not able to get into that chamber. Isn't that right, Richard?
Yes, indeed. I mean,
Richard,
yes,
I want to say something. Carrie, the information that I have on that was based on what you had said about the possibility of a shift in the Earth's axis. That was part of the astrological research that I've been working to confirm that had happened in the past as well at Giza. And that information that I had received about last year, that the Earth was looking to do at least a 6.5 degree shift in order to bring the alignment of Giza back into alignment with the ecliptic plane. So that information matched information that we did have that you received from your source. Go ahead.
Okay, but let me ask you here, because we are getting towards the end of the chronology anyway, so we could sort of verge a bit here. Whether or not there is evidence, though, of a shift thus far, if there really is evidence. I don't know if we have scientific evidence that such a shift has happened.
I have asked some people that work specifically to look at the movement of celestial bodies placement before April 1st and after May 1st. And the word that we have is that there appears to be some kind of a change, but I don't have the physical evidence. But that's something that we will post with you and on our website, and I hope to have that within this week. But they have indicated that something did happen.
Okay, that's very interesting. So we need to follow that up. All right. So Richard, if you want to continue, I do urge everyone to go to my blog on projectcamelotproductions.com and read the actual communiques from this secret source, because there's very excellent information in there, and it does validate also the information given by the Giza Geometrics team here. Okay, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, yes. Okay, I mean, I'm going to bring in something else slightly here, which has a direct bearing as well. It's a bit of a personal validation, because when Judith and I in previous years were in the pyramid, in the GP, doing our own thing, I had assisted by Judith, we worked together on this. I had a particularly powerful lucid experience in the King's Chamber. This is the day before we did the entombment experiment. And during that experience, I was given to see, stroke, understand about a chamber high in the pyramid, which I termed and wrote about at the time, immediately following, which I termed a containment chamber. That was the word that came to my mind that seemed to fit the description of it. And also a shaft which leads close from that deep down into the earth, into other chambers below ground, which both Judith and I have visited out of body as part of our sort of history of experiences. So when the information came from your sources it sure as heck made us sit up, because we'd never heard from what we would class as a strong source ever before. Anybody else, actually referring to an upper chamber, another chamber of some description and to some special significance high in the pyramid. And of course, when we read that, we straight away thought, oh my God, look here for the first time. The other thing is, I would say, that has a bearing on this, where we talk about vibration and vibrational fields and so on. I mean, we do go along with that personally ourselves, because it has also been given to us to understand that, where it has been said in legend that only certain people will be able to enter or go beyond certain levels of vibration, we understand that those who may have been behind such technology, if such exists, then we are of a complete acceptance ourselves that not just us, but many other people, we believe, just like in the Close Encounters film. We think that's a sort of parody of what's happening now. We believe that there are many, many people who, through their line of incarnation, through their line of birth, through their development of DNA, through their vibrational signature as it is now, have a specific ability to be able to pass through certain areas that would be harmful to others. In fact, we know firsthand of this. We've gathered stories along the way that have been quite innocently told to us, going back to when those whom we talked to were children on the Giza Plateau, when nothing else was there, when building was only starting there, who told of things that happened to people who went into areas below ground and beyond certain levels that they knew of as children and were able to access as children, but they knew that there was big danger when they went beyond those certain levels, because there was some sort of vibrational influence that disorientated them, harmed them, or worse. Stories such as that were told to us by more than one person, and gave a direct validation one to the other in the process. So yes, I mean, when you mentioned about vibration and so on, I mean, that came to mind immediately. So I mean, if we go down just to the end of the chronology really to date, we figure that if there was advanced technology down below there, as we feel, then it's likely that the operation overnight was tied to that. In fact, we have evidence that for ourselves that a special interest group, as your evidence gave, actually came from a foreign place, another country, to Giza, to coincide with those activities. That's another thing that ties into it all. And we have from yet another source ourselves that whatever was removed during that operation was tracked and followed to a secure area elsewhere in Egypt. We are aware of that place, but we're not going to say it here and now, although it may have been said before. But suffice to say that that's what our information is given to us.
Are you saying that you think that some of the stuff that has been removed has been moved to a certain place?
Yes, been moved to a secure place, a secure, very secure place in Egypt.
Interesting. Okay. That might be worth pursuing as well, in terms of the symbolism behind the selected place, or whether or not it's just a temporary stopping point. I don't know.
We were also approached, or we were given advice that another organized group were connected with the story and were interested in the advanced technology, and they weren't happy with the attention that we were drawing to it. But they wanted to be the first, otherwise they wanted to be the first to get their hands on any gold and stuff and other valuable stuff that was coming out of the ground, or likely to come out of the ground, that we had captured ourselves, even if they did know about it themselves beforehand. They said that if we would involve ourselves to help them, that we would be given their protection, which was rather interesting.
Okay, but you refused, I take it?
Absolutely. You see, because I mean, I have to say this, and I know Bill is going to come in on this for certain. You see, Kerry, on the one hand, I mean, we're following our own exploration paths to fulfill whatever it is we are in this birth plan to fulfill. Judith and I, that is what we have followed. It is our lifetime following, our calling. And I know it's the same with Bill and Lucy. But as a part of that calling, we've come to understand the system in Egypt, which I know you're fully aware of yourself. And we know that it's a sort of ingrained system now where you've got sort of hapless villagers at the bottom of the pile who sort of scratch what they can from the ground. It goes into a sort of, you know, as long as everybody plays ball, then nothing happens. You know, strictly speaking, if things are taken from the ground or found, it's illegal. You can't do it. But legal is an interpretation, and it has another interpretation, obviously, if everybody's happy and everybody benefits from it. But just like a product being grown by natives in a country in the world, which then fetches a huge price in a developed market on the other side of the world, so it is in this case. You get the villagers who are scratching a living, who are dealing with you know, their infrastructure needing upgrading and so on, and they're scratching a living, hoping for better. And you know, we're on their side, and we would love to be able to somehow break the impasse so that there is some legitimacy brought to this, and at the same time, hopefully bringing out anything that is to be found below ground, be it ancient technology or other wonders and knowledgeable benefits. You know, we want everybody to benefit from it, and you know, if our heart's desire is found, it would be to see that happen. We know that there's plenty of people in the world who are interested in this. We had over 200,000 hits on the sites in a short time afterwards when all this was put out. You know, we're not there to stir things up. We're there. You know, we've splashed ourselves into the middle of it, right into the middle of it, and you know, we're looking to see good come out of it, not bad.
Right. Okay. So from this point, why don't we go to Bill Brown and have him talk about what he mentioned, what he brought forth on his presentation a few days ago, last weekend, I guess it was. I'm not sure the exact date. I think it was May 9th. So we're several days beyond that. But Bill, can you reveal what it is that you revealed there and that hadn't already been talked about, and then where that leads?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I did go on in public, make a public statement here in Chicago on May the 9th, in which we did show people that what we were discovering in Egypt was that there was definite evidence of a pre-dynastic Egypt. It certainly goes back beyond the time frame associated with what Egyptologists talk about today. So we were able to kind of show that definitely more than one civilization existed prior to who we are now, and that we were, in fact, running across direct evidence, buried evidence, that was actually proving that that was very true. What has happened since that meeting is the fact that I was informed that more than 3 governments in the world were involved with this, not just Egypt, and that we were dealing with something much higher and more involved than we had anticipated just to be a black market situation. So what we were able to define was that this technology that we were looking at was in fact associated with what I like to call the halls of record, referred to by Edgar Casey, and that my wife Lucina Lovis had also indicated that information, that we would in fact find this discovery in a specific area, and it was in fact exactly why we were looking in the area that became the location of the illegal dig site in September. In July of last year, 2009, I had reported all of my engineering records publicly, which specifically gave a 8 decimal point accuracy for satellites to be able to see if this was in fact the exact location. And with the high technology and the satellite imagery that people were able to know exists, we did get a confirmation that that was confirmed. and that we noticed as soon as that information was released that the 6 men died in unusual circumstances. When I went in to purchase the property, which has been mentioned now, we were attempting to be able to confirm that there was something, in fact, underground associated with this halls of record possibility. And when we did, the ground penetrating radar picked up enormous evidence of high energy sources. This energy source that we started to pick up was confirmed twice, and then when we got the link that happened in April the 28th that a high energy source had been picked up in a upper room inside the Great Pyramid, and that energy had been followed by some interested groups, and that was no longer in the Giza Plateau area, and that it was followed to a near area in Cairo, and then they lost the track. So that was basically the information that we were able to put out publicly, that there is a very interested, high-level groups interested in this evidence that we've been presenting, and that we are being monitored, and that we would like to just understand that we, as an individual and as a spiritual growth that we're on, do have very high intuitive and other capabilities, and that we believe that we may be even used by some of these people to help track other items in which we know do exist. So we're trying now to become aware of what this is all about, and basically to inform the people that there is in fact evidence now of this earlier times that we call of the Atlantean times, and we're trying to prove this physically today.
Okay. Can you go into any more detail in terms of what it is you found? In other words, it sounds as though ground penetrating radar was your, besides intuition, and it looks like you did some dowsing, but basically you're using that technology in order to determine what is beneath the surface. Do you have a background in archaeology, Bill, that you can talk about a little bit, or geology, or, in other words, what makes it so that you are able to use that technology and at the same time understand what you're seeing?
Bill, perhaps I could just jump on this for a second and just say, I know from Bill's, he's very modest in this respect, so I'm drawing you out, Bill. Sorry about this. Bill has got a very high engineering background, very high engineering background experience. And, you can tidy this up, Bill, in a moment, but I know that that's what led really into his skill in that, led him into, through his interest in the Giza Plateau generally, to investigating the potential for a star pattern correlation to the ground. And, I wouldn't want us to lose track of the fact that the importance of the geomatrix blueprint on the ground, because it has been so verified now, where others have tried through correlations to singular constellations and so on. The geomatrix actually lays the whole thing out, and we're still picking off the star points on the ground and finding things that haven't even been found yet. We know of things that haven't been found yet, and of course it lays out not just the place where all the activity took place, where the villagers lost their lives. It actually lays out other spots on the ground. It's there for all to see on the site, and one after another, bang, 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 bang. We already know of what those indicators point to in many cases already, and it's there for other investigators and other people to take an interest and investigate also. Desktop, what I would call armchair investigators, can do their own work on it. So the geomatrix was a starting point.
Okay, but Bill, to answer the question a little more specifically, when you worked, I see, with the Polish group initially, isn't that right?
Yes, I've been working with the Polish group for about 4 years. associated both in Chicago and in Poland. And during that time period, I was the project manager on excavation sites in the Egypt area. I had been working with specialists who were, in fact, geologists, and we were able to understand what was underground, and the major significant importance was to finding the water table. With all of this background information that we were able to develop, I was able also to do that at Giza, and we were able to show that the groundwater at Giza that was being claimed by the current administration, we might say, has indicated that the water level under the pyramid, under the Sphinx, was only 5 meters, and that they've gone on record that there is no rooms underneath the Sphinx or even in the area, and that there is no Atlantean technology. When we were able to use the ground penetrating radar testing, which is a very highly sophisticated brand new technology that actually shows underground imagery in 3-dimensional, we were able to find some specific voids underneath the ground in the same area associated with the illegal dig site that was connected with the exact area that ends up right now on the April 28th movie. We were able to see that 20 meters underground that there was no water, that this type of technology verifies that even if there is water, it tells you it's water, how deep it is, and what's inside the water. We started finding huge underground rooms that were empty, and in one particular case, we found something of great importance in an empty room. That room was very big, and that energy seemed to be leaking from the corners of the rock-cut, what we call tomb area, and that only one particular item was in the room itself, about the size of a executive briefcase. And with the technology that we were using, it was able to tell us exactly the type of material that was found, and specifically that it was a wooden box, and within the wooden box the elements of gold were picked up, and within that box was also a large, huge energy source emission. Because we were unable to...
That's actually very stunning. In fact, I think that that's the most coherent statement that I've heard so far in terms of what you guys have discovered that is obviously something that the powers that be are aware of but don't want out there.
The location of where we found it was adjacent to where the illegal dig took place in the village in September.
So it's part of the Khufu temple complex underground?
That's correct, according to all the information. And if you even look at Dr. Hawas's books, he has even drawn the entire Khufu palace complex under that area location. And during my investigation over the last 5 months, I was actually taken underground in some of the tunnel networks that actually showed me that that does exist. So
okay,
when we found...
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I'm trying to make the correlations. What we have are statements that there is nothing under the Sphinx, but this area is some distance from the Sphinx. Are you saying that this area, using your ground penetrating radar, you were able to determine that this area extends to under the Sphinx?
That's correct. In the ground penetrating radar, we were able to pick up a huge underground tunnel network that was confirmed. And based on the other information that's come out over the last 20 years, where other ground penetrating radar had confirmed in 1992 the location of another tunnel complex, underground tunnel in the same area, that those two tunnels actually do connect. And those tunnels were a part of the April 28th excavation that we now have a shaft 10 meters or 100 feet in the ground, whatever it is, so that all of it was totally connected by a system of tunnels, and that
Okay.
this does go into the temple complex.
But how far is this this box or energy device that you discovered? How far from the area of, in other words, is that energy device right below where the 6 men were murdered, or is this
Okay,
somewhere?
it was adjacent. It was probably about maybe, I would say, 50 meters from where their entrance to the underground tombs that they entered. They entered 2 underground tombs that have been shown by the Egyptian authority, but based on our investigation, we know that there were 3 underground tombs, and that 3rd underground tomb is adjacent to the area that we did our ground penetrating radar, and that it was only 10 meters under the ground.
Okay, but I'm assuming you're linking the death of the 6 men with the discovery of this box.
I'm linking the location of the death of the men to the location of the box. Whether it was because of the incident that did happen, we feel that they could be involved, but we can't say that they were directly linked. However, we do believe that they may have found this source and hidden it somewhere, and that it may have been the result of why they did disappear.
It just leaves a whole bunch of questions. I mean, that's really where we're at. It leaves a lot of questions, that's all.
That's fascinating. So where are you going with this now? I mean, have you told us everything that you told the people on May 9th, or was there more to this story?
That's pretty much what we've told everybody publicly right now. What we have not told anybody publicly is that we know that because of what we have discovered, and that other contacts that I've been in contact with, that there is at least 10 of these items that are available, and that archaeology in Egypt is going to probably, most likely, if allowed publicly access, will discover more of these type items, which is where we're going, is to prove that a pre-existent civilization did exist. That's why what we're doing.
Okay.
And also, I would say, and also the fact that it would be nice along the way to validate the fact that people of that time facing catastrophe did in fact lay down a repository of containing the total of their knowledge, as we would now, as we're doing now. I believe across the world at the moment we're laying down repositories of seeds and DNA and God knows what. And you know, that's what to be expected. And if the Hall of Records represents that from a previous time, pre-catastrophe, then it would be nice along the way from all of this for that to be validated, found, and the benefit of that realized to the world.
We've got a chamber on top of this, the Great Pyramid, that has in some way been activated itself by the presence of a heat signature that the military picked up twice, apparently, so that twice this visitation happened, that the military person that wrote to us referred to an entity. I myself did a remote viewing and saw that entity to be what we know of as Thoth, and he was dressed in gold, had a headdress, and was wearing like the ibis costume, if you will, but that he was a very real being, and that is what I saw. Now, if there is a device in there, we're also talking about this energy source, whatever you want to call it, that you discovered in this particular place, and you're saying there are 10 other places around the Giza Plateau or around Egypt?
Around Egypt that we know.
Okay. And other than when you said you looked into the container, you said that you saw gold, and was there something else, some other, in other words, was there crystal in there?
Okay. when we were able to look into the wooden box, it indicated that there was two gold foil separated 1/2 inch by a brilliant white light or a crystalline structure.
Okay. And that's quite possible. Crystals do contain knowledge. They are able to contain knowledge. I'm not sure that, I mean, certainly in present day, we're not that familiar with how to do that with crystals, but I do know that they are capable of holding great amounts of knowledge and information. So it's quite possible, as you say, that, as Richard is mentioning, that the Hall of Records may indeed be contained holographically within these crystals.
I would like to add one thing to that, that the gold foil appeared to have some kind of images written on it, and so we believe that this may be the type of tablet or written information that needs to be accessed. And we think that because of its location, and specifically its association to what Edgar Casey had indicated, and that we would find it there, and that it has been confirmed to be within the Pharaoh Khufu palace at the level of the Nile instead of up on top of the Great Pyramid rock cut area, that this could possibly be the repository that everyone is looking for, and that we may have come across at least the first evidence of it.
Okay, but this also goes over to the paws of the Sphinx, because we have this new dig that has been established right in that area, haven't we?
That's correct, and according to the information that we have, that about 10 meters down, we believe that the area had been flooded by the Nile during a long period of time, and that there's about 10 meters of sand covering the first or the lid or the top of a temple complex, and that temple complex is about 10 meters high, and that below that is another complex about 10 meters. And this information is what we're actually working to recover right now. And of course, this is the evidence that has been associated with something called the labyrinth, which we believe is completely all over Egypt in many places.
Right. Very interesting. Okay. So go ahead, Richard. You have something to say?
Yeah, thank you. I just throw in a little aside, if I may. When you mentioned crystal and crystal stone a moment ago, I would say to you in first person singular with regards to our own experience, we would say that we know of Tuaoi stone that is in one of the chambers that we've been to and been in below ground at the GP itself. As I say, I'm saying that singular to ourselves, but I'm just throwing that in. That's what we've seen there, and has a part in the purpose of energy manipulation in this whole thing.
Okay.
Also, Richard, one thing else I'd like to mention was the fact that in the area where we did find this GPR item, that in the exact same area a large shaft had been dug and that had been entered about 7 meters down, and that they had encountered a very large stone room, but was afraid to go in, and that they covered the shaft back up. When we were doing the ground penetrating radar in that area, that we were aware that someone had already dug a large shaft about 8 meters underground, and that they had encountered a very large stone wall that seemed to be not a good sign for them, and they covered the shaft back up. When we went into the same area where they had dug the shaft, our computers were unable to pick up any readings, and that they were in fact shut down or shut off, which had happened to us on other dig sites or other excavation GPR encounters. That we had found that there was a high, enormous energy source that did shut down the computers, And we found out that in those particular cases, even the men that were doing the ground penetrating radar were sick for about 2 weeks afterwards.
Oh, wow.
So we decided that we didn't want to become a statistics in that way, and we just left the little black on the screen and went away.
Are you saying, I mean, I'm a little confused in that they encountered a wall, but are you saying that behind the wall was this device that you had also located in the box?
This was
There were
there were two rooms. The first room that we encountered the box in, we were able to get the transmission.
Oh.
However, when, about maybe 15 or 20 meters away from that, we were into another area. We had to move our equipment because our equipment would only pick up a 20 square meter area. And we went into the next area where this other energy source that was shutting down the machinery, we were unable to define what was there. However, the other GPR had indicated that there was a room there, but we were unable to see what was in the room.
Okay, very, very interesting. Okay, have you since, for example, tried to remote view that?
Yes, we have people that have done that, and they have indicated an entrance doorway that went straight into the underground complex of the Great Pyramid. But that the entrance was blocked. Pardon?
And now we're back again to vibrational shields.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that, because my source that was writing to us was referring to that as well.
Indeed. I mean, it takes us back. I mean, it's something that I've believed right from the start. It ties into this intonement thing, you know, being able to set the whole pyramid off. I mean, it's documented without necessarily going over it again. That you know, that has been achieved already. We've got validation for that the effect is legitimate. That the GP can be affected, sound affected, to act in a certain way, creating harmonic vibrations which exponentially increase as they continue. And this whole thing about vibration leads us to the underground areas, and the legend, as it would have it, that only those who are able to can go beyond certain areas without becoming ill, because at a molecular vibrational level they can't sustain the energy that has been generated or implanted or imbued in that area. We noticed that in the HC2, in the so-called Cave of the Birds, you know, and we put that out in our writings that, you know, we as a genuine warning, you know, that if those go in there who aren't supposed to be there, who aren't meant to be there, then they do risk self-harm.
Right, I understand. There is also the digging where they said that they were stopping digging because, and this wasn't this close to the Sphinx because of the same problem.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing on that. That's correct, that they are digging. It's about 100 feet or maybe 10 meters in front of, due east of the Sphinx. When I went down into a couple of these areas underground, I experienced very difficult chest pains in which I thought I was having a heart attack. And I am sensitive to some energies, and that I could not be in that area for a very long time. And we think that this is the type of high advanced technology that is shielding these areas and protecting these areas from people who are not, I guess, according to legend, are not permitted to enter, and that it will take a much higher level vibration to enter these. And I think this is a safeguard, and I think it's simply why they had to stop, because they simply couldn't go any further. And that they are looking for people like Richard and yourself and me, possibly, that may have the ability to be able to sustain or walk through that type of an energy shield.
Okay, and I see here that they they talked about what they called a sand trap, and that they had decided to stop digging rather than trigger the actual device or whatever the protective measures are. And it sounds like you were encountering something similar as well.
Can I say something about the sand trap?
Sure.
When I talked about the person who had gone down 8 meters, had and reached a wall, he had found and stepped on a stone that started to rotate, and it was almost like a Indiana Jones movie. That was actually what he felt, that energy, and that's why they immediately covered it up. And I think this is similar to the same type that you're just talking about, because we're only talking about probably 150 meters to 75 meters from the same location where they are now.
One way of looking at this, Kerry, is to sort of put some reality to it, is to go into presupposition. If we presuppose that there were those of a civilization that were of us, but of an earlier time, who simply developed their own technologies that were highly advanced in their own way, didn't conflict with ours, but they simply went down different lines of technology that went into earth energies, what we call today scalar energy and other energies, where we today are hydroelectric and so forth, nuclear. Those people who were able to manipulate those energies at that time, or the scientists of their day, shall we say, and they were able to operate and function on levels which we now are finally breaking out of the nonsense that we're talking sort of mumbo jumbo of the hereafter and all the rest of it. That now people at least are starting to accept an understanding of dimensions beyond quantum, other levels, dimensions of existence. And these people back then understood all this. They worked with all this. This is the presupposition.
Sure.
And if so, when they laid down their repository, don't you think for one moment with such understandings that they didn't roll the probabilities forward and understand what may or may not happen in the future when this technology might be useful to us in the current cosmic climate? And that in that knowledge, they would have built in safeguards so that those of let's say it as it is, of a lower vibration, even if they managed to access, couldn't get in. You know, and that's where we sort of step forward. This perhaps is the answer to our calling. And I'm not singling us out. I definitely am not just singling us out, because I truly, truly believe that just like in the Close Encounters film, there are lots and lots of people out there who are in their own way and at their own level and at their own speed are also following this calling, being drawn to this function. These energy barriers that are in place, they are preventing people from getting into the central core of it all, and that those barriers will only be crossed by those who are able to cross without coming to serious harm.
Okay, yes, and I understand what you're saying, and this has been true of the excavations at Egypt for as long as we can remember and have heard about, certainly in the lore as well. What I want to talk about a little bit here now is actually the notion behind what you guys are calling the Giza geomatrix and the use of it, in other words, as part of a way to activate what you consider to be a protective device for the planet going through this time in this part of space at this time. So who among you wants to talk about that?
Do you want me to give you a lead into this, Bill?
Well, go ahead and start.
Okie dokie. Well, okay then. We'll pick up where we left off. We know the geomatrix blueprint does show how everything was laid out. We also know from studies that have been done over decades that the important sites in Egypt and in other countries all can be traced out to show a geometric grid pattern, very precise geometric grid pattern around and across the earth. We also know that it has been recorded at those places that there are very high ley energies of the earth. if we regard the external energies being the gravitational energy fields that are swirling around and outside, I suppose you would refer to the ley energies as being those evident within the Earth and through the Earth. And these points, these nodes, are all marked around the Earth by standing stones, by pyramids. In other countries, the whole Earth is covered by them. And legend would have it, of course, that these nodes, as a part of the geomatrix plan, were determined and laid out so that if activated, in other words, if an energy boost could be given to these sites, then it would have an external effect upon the vibrational balances of the energies of the Earth. And this really is the crux of it, because our understanding is that if such a thing exists as we believe it does, then here we are facing perhaps troubled cosmic times that are reflected in all the planets of our solar system, not just the Earth, and with more to come, that perhaps it was understood and meant to be by those people who perhaps didn't get it quite right in their time, that they left it for us to try and pick up the threads and get it right this time, beyond all the politics which occurred then and are occurring now, and for the good of everyone, including those who would have it for themselves. I have to say that this technology, if so, is used as it was meant to be used in order to be activated and help balance the energies of the Earth, so that the Earth is in its pristine state, if you like, energetically, to withstand solar bursts and so on, emissions and so on, that are likely, according to the 24th solar cycle, that are going to be produced to hit us as we go through the December 2012 period, where we pass through the plane of the ecliptic of the Milky Way and line up with the dark rift and form a solar cross in the alignment of our own system in opposition to the plane of the ecliptic of the Milky Way. There's a whole lot of influence. That's not to mention, of course, the brown dwarf that's heading in, nor the other star that's been identified that suddenly popped into view, which Bill will elaborate on in a moment. There's a whole lot of things that are going on cosmically that are not mumbo-jumbo. They're scientific fact, absolute scientific fact, which nobody can run away from. And they are conjuncting in December 2012. Fact. Forget the mumbo-jumbo. It's there for anybody to check themselves if they want to get out of their armchairs and do it. And what we're saying is, and what we believe is, that the energies which can be activated by whatever has been left behind by our ancestors, then they will help to balance the planet and help us through those potentially troubled times.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And to answer specifically about the importance of the geometrics blueprint is to show that there was a specific pattern used and left behind, if we could remember, and astrology was always the ancient science of the cosmos. What I was able to do was to decode that pattern on the ground in order to locate and find some of these entrances that would lead us to areas of our ancient past in which they are records that indicate that they would leave behind information to help us to move forward in both our physical and spiritual realities. What I believe that we are at this point was that if we were able to find one of these crystalline structures, and based on our knowledge were to use that crystal and to place it inside the Great Pyramid, for example, in the case of Egypt, that the Great Pyramid itself would reactivate as if it was a key, and that Great Pyramid would then encounter or work in balance with the rest of the pyramids on the planet, which would bring back the more structured underground ley lines that have been basically cut off due to our advancement of humans. I believe what has happened at the Giza Plateau is that this grid system is underground, and that it does emit from the center of the Great Pyramid, and that where these grids cross is, I like to call it the name, a node point or a stargate that allows us to access some form of knowledge about who we are, why we're here, and where we can go, and to remind us of the great potential that we once had but have lost. So this is basically the reason behind the geometrics, is to try and find these devices to show that they did exist, and that we were able to show that that blueprint not only works at Giza, but it works at any sacred site on the planet. I took that information down into Peru and was able to do the same thing, and we were able to find that it was all based on star systems, and that the star systems could be dated to time periods to prove that only at that time period could that star system be remotely placed on the ground. We also know that at Angkor Wat that this happened in Cambodia. And so the geometrics program is to show people around the world that if they just look in their backyard and use this blueprint, that they may be able to find the repositories left by many, many ancient cultures during many time periods. And that's basically the purpose of our website.
Actually, the time clock there, Bill, I'm just going to break in and elaborate one thing for you there, Bill, from having worked with you, with us all on this. I mean, that time clock principle, or part of it, is extremely important, because in discovering the geometrics, that also enabled a time fix to be made to the ground for when this was the conception in modern time, in our cycle of time, when this was started off. And examining that and taking into account geological data, tectonic data, and all the other data, it's possible then, I know Bill's working furiously on this at the moment, it's possible then to actually examine the star clock from that fixed point and run the clock forward and actually pick up events and times and cycles within our civilization in our known history now. And it's also from that possible to run the cycles backwards in time to identify right back through how these cycles reproduce themselves from the past. So the cycles can be recognized from the time clock out of the geometrics. And these principles and this information is tremendously important to identify the further information that needs to be discovered. What we need here is collaboration. We want to knock on the door and saying, hey, we want to collaborate, not we want to cause hassle. We don't want hassle, we want collaboration, so this whole darn thing can benefit everyone.
Let's talk a little bit more about the notion of Earth protection, because I think that you haven't actually talked specifically about what it is that the connection or activation of these various devices and sites, which, by the way, mirrors the wingmakers.com website premise that was talked about quite a while ago, that activation of various sites would create a sort of a matrix of protection around the Earth, such
Correct.
that it could go through this time without the demolishing and all the cataclysmic events and so on and so forth. So can you talk about that specifically, that how the Earth protection would work?
Yes, it's very simple actually. The process, we already know and people understand about the magnetic field around the Earth, and we already know that magnetic field shields us from the influences of solar radiation, radiation from the sun, particularly CMI bursts from the sun, where basically the sun spits out bursts of energy towards us, and the field of energy, gravitational energy around the Earth forms a buffer shield basically, and it produces the northern lights, aurora borealis, the displays that we see on the ground. And we know that there are a couple of holes in the ozone layer already, that it isn't in its best condition. We understand that scalar technology are in the form of HAARP, HAARP technology in the States, based in Alaska and other places, that the rumor mills are rife with stories that this is being used and tested and is actually enhancing the disruption to our atmosphere by actually helping to trigger earthquakes and other weather patterns on the planet. And there are plenty of websites that present that evidence. And we believe that possibly that could be attempts to refine it in order to try and help close or rebalance the magnetosphere and the gravitational energy around the Earth. If the pyramids and the pattern around the Earth can be activated, can be triggered from its central point at the GP, then our belief is that the energies that are produced from that at an unseen level, at a gravitational level surrounding the planet, will actually help to basically balance the pathways of energy, the pathways of gravitational energy around the planet, reaching right on up to our outermost shell of protection against such outbursts from the sun in particular. And I mean, that's it in a nutshell, although I would hope Bill could enlarge on it a bit.
Yeah, Richard, one of the things that was channeled by my wife Lucina over 10 years ago, and why I have been doing all the work that I've been doing in Egypt, was based on the fact that a crystalline device was hidden from mankind, in that it would be, in the case that Lucy had indicated, was hidden within the body and the mummy of the great of the Pharaoh of Khufu. And they indicated, according to that information, that if that crystalline structure was placed within the Great Pyramid, that the Great Pyramid would in itself be the trigger that would connect to all known and unknown pyramids on the planet, and that would connect the grid system and create the electromagnetic canopy that was at one time surrounding our planet. And so what we believe that can happen is that if the Great Pyramid can be activated, that it can be the initiator and do this connection, and that canopy will be reinstalled around the planet, and that's what the shielding is, simply for our planet Earth. But I believe that it goes and extends beyond just the planet Earth, that it's more on a cosmic level, and that it protects and works with the entire cosmos, and that the cosmos energy is the energy that supplements protecting the entire solar system and other planets.
That's a bit better, a little more information in terms of the possibilities there. Okay, well, I think that covers, at least at first glance, all the problems, all the things that have been going on
and the Hawara connectors. So I have been to Egypt 30 times in 5 years, and I'm hoping to be able to go back in almost monthly and to work with these people. And the purpose of why we're trying to show what we are doing on our website is to show that there are many sites within Egypt. And of course, the Saqqara one is the one closest to us that we have worked. I have done investigations between the actual Great Pyramid and Saqqara in the region of the sand dune areas, and that's one of the reasons why the star mapping geometrics blueprint has worked. We have been able to go out in the middle of the desert sand areas where there's only sand dunes with GPS equipment, and with our computers telling us within a decimal point, we have been able to go out into those sand areas near Saqqara and find some evidence that there is, in fact, more to be discovered. And obviously, that's the whole reason why we're trying to work with the officials. So Saqqara is very important to us, especially because it carries an earlier record, we believe, of Giza.
When I was out there, I had quite a stunning experience, and I believe it's quite a powerful spot. And I also got confirmation recently from my interview with Ashiana Dean that I will be releasing quite soon, in which they were talking about Saqqara being the location of the Stargate.
Correct. Right. That's correct. I believe that. What we hope to be able to do is to be able to work in collaboration with these type of people to kind of support those activities and to also raise the funding to be able to support them. And I do have in Saqqara and very close to Saqqara experience personally myself during meditative areas, been able to feel and sense those, and I do believe they are there, and that it's up to us really and truly at the vibrational level that we're moving to through these experiences to actually activate those and reopen them. And that is what I believe is the energy that if we're able to activate those ancient stargates like that all over the world, that vibration will drive out and close the other stargates of minor importance.
I guess if there is anything else that either of you think needs to be added here to to what we've presented here so far, please go right ahead.
I just throw in just a little aside to what you were saying earlier about further purpose to an activation of the pyramids, of the pyramid grid, and that is to do a bit of a reality check. I mean, there's still people out there who are sort of pondering this or just waking up to it. It does require a paradigm shift, because we've got centuries and centuries since the last time that this cycle passed through something like this, where those in charge have conditioned humankind to be dead to this. And the reality check tells us that even within the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but certainly as recent as the last couple of years, people's minds across the planet are opening up to discussions of these kind, where it would have been heresy at best. You'd have been a naughty person to talk about things like this. And we're saying the same thing about, to take it just that little step further. We take the reality check back to examine the whole question of ETs. And science now tells us in our faces, the astronomy tells us in our faces, that it is naive in the absolute extreme to presuppose that in the millions of other potential duplications of Earth or something similar out in the universe, that within them that life couldn't exist. And that's just a sort of overview statement. Our understanding is, according to legend, that, hey, there are lots of different shades of ET, just as there are lots of different shades of humankind on planet Earth. There are different types, variations on the theme out there in space, and in a time outside of our little bubble of comfort, of history that we've been conditioned to accept and nothing beyond. Outside of that bubble, there were previous civilizations that rolled through the years the eons of our planet, and we understand and accept that they were developed, or their development was assisted or interfered with and assisted by those from afar. And they undoubtedly had their politics just the same as we did, just the same as in Atlantean times. It was as it is now, so we need to calm down and normalize this a little bit. Of course there are ETs, of course there's been collaboration, and now the evidence is coming forth from the Dulce files and other sources, collaboration that has taken place for some time. And hey, that's fine, that's okay. It's just that we all need to wake up to this.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you all for coming forward and in regard to all of this, and perhaps you can talk about next steps. Bill, did you want to address that?
Yes, thank you. I was going to talk about the next step. Thank you. We can say that basically all the information that we have been able to put together, both publicly and non-publicly, that the public can look for the date of September the 23rd, 2010. It's not only a full moon and the autumn equinox, it's a very, very important Stargate timing for the Great Pyramid, and that we believe that what we are involved with right now has to do with that particular date, and that the public can be seeing some new developments in the Giza area relating to that, as well as the heat source that was just recently picked up, that we may be seeing a lot more of that type of activity between now and then, but that is the date that we have, and I have personally been directed to be able to tell publicly we can look to the heavens as an important date for this time period for our own evolution.
Thank you all, and we will stay tuned for what is coming next in terms of various discoveries that you may be making, and also the developments in terms of what goes on at the Giza Plateau and around Egypt from this point forward.
That's a final comment. I hear what you're saying on this, and if we have found ourselves to have sort of jumped in as a result of the geomatrix and our pathways into the middle of it all, and we're causing a splash, but we're nonetheless pawns in the passage of the whole thing, trying to do our best. In that naivety, I hope also that it will be realized by the powers that be and anybody else who's listening in who might have an influence, that what we're doing needn't necessarily be to a disruptive result. We're actually trying to do something that in a collaborative way we can add to, we can actually help with and bring good to a lot of people from. And we hope that there is that we don't encounter any discrimination as a result of our pathway. We're only following our calling, and we'll continue to do so. And we hope to God that we get help. We need monetary help. We need spiritual help, and the thoughts and wishes of everybody to speed us along on their behalf. We hope we get it all.
I want to thank all of you for your courage in coming forward, for sharing this information, for spending your many diligent hours investigating all of this. And I want to thank Adrian as well for his technical help to your group, and wonderful presentations that you've got. I encourage everyone to go to gizamap.com. And then there's also richardgabriel.info. That is also an excellent resource for information regarding all of this that we're talking about here. Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you very much, you guys, and take care, and let's see what happens and what transpires now out of the future.
Thank you, Kerry, for your time.
Okay, and this is Kerry Cassidy, Project Camelot, ProjectCamelotProductions.com and ProjectCamelotPortal.com. Please visit our website for more information as well, and do support this cause if you are able to. I believe that they will have a donation button on their site. If it's not already installed, it will be, and we appreciate any help as well. So thank you very much.